A Texas father is accused of beating a man to death. That father told investigators that the victim was molesting his 4-year-old daughter. It happened Saturday afternoon in Shiner, Texas. That's about halfway between Houston and San Antonio. The father, who has not been identified, says the victim had been helping him with some horses. He says he then heard something going on in a detached garage and found that man assaulting his daughter.
During the course of him trying to rescue his daughter, he struck the individual several times, and the individual ended up dying. He had remorse that the individual had died. I mean, it wasn't his intent. He was just protecting his daughter.
That father was not arrested, and the sheriff says it's unlikely that he ever will be. The Lavaca County DA will leave this case now in the hands of a grand jury. So Steve is here now with attorney and also jury consultant Mary Griffitts. I'll pass it your way, Steve.
All right, Heather, thanks. Mary, let's talk about that. You leave it in the hands of a grand jury. We know prosecutors go and present stuff to the grand jury, and the grand jury decides. Do prosecutors sometimes present with less zeal and are friendly to a defendant and say this guy felt concerned about his daughter and that's why he did this? How would you see that playing out in a grand jury?
Well, because of the facts of this case, and this case being so tragic in many ways, I think that the morality of this case is going to be an important part, that the prosecution is also going to have to show legally how this was a crime. So this is going to be something that maybe not as zealous, but more a sympathetic look at this story, because it is such a tragedy that what occurred.
Small town. Shiner has a population of 1,975, and I don't want to sound strange. I don't want to freak anybody out, but us dads are a strange breed, and we do think about these things when we have children. If somebody does anything, it touches my daughter or son. So this is kind of a scenario that, as fathers, maybe mothers too, we play out. Does that help this guy, that a lot of people feel for him and we're so protective of our children?
You know, that's the exact thing that what we're going to do, what any trial lawyer does, is that they want the jurors in the box to put themselves in the position of the person, in this case the defendant. What would you have done if you had heard your daughter screaming in a barn and had run in and had seen molestation? What would you have done? And was that reasonable, what he did do? That's what they're hoping these jurors are going to ask themselves.
Jury of his peers. Again, we don't really think it's going to get that far, but it'll be a jury of his peers. And here's what some of the folks in Shiner were saying about this case.
And we're sitting right there, and we discussed what little we knew about it. And I frankly said, I'd give the guy a medal.
When he saw that, I think it's justified. I'm sorry, but I totally think it's justified. What would you do if it's your child?
All right, you're an expert on jurors. You know what kind of pool you want. Winner? Is this case a winner if you're defending it? If you're defending the 23-year-old suspect accused of killing a man who was in the process of molesting his daughter.
I think that there's definitely never just a winner case, because there's always two sides.
I don't mean to label it a winner because it's a tragedy and all, but you know, would you?
I think that you would walk in, and I think that you would definitely have a strong argument for it. May have not been the best thing. It was just something that he believed he needed to do.
Tell me some of those arguments you make.
For that.
There's a self-defense argument, right?
It's
defense of child.
Obviously self-defense. Defense of his property. This happened on his property to his child. The very fact that he was there and saw this, immediate action needed to be taken to protect that little girl. And I think
there's also the sudden rage thing we've talked about. You know, that's also a defense. If you see something happens and you lose it, that's a defense too. Absolutely.
And that was the thing about, oh my gosh, well, he got to him with his hands and he kept hitting him. Well, there's a moment there when it's almost primal. You see something happening to your cub, a mama cub or a daddy cub. Oh my gosh, I've got to protect you. So there's an argument, a legal argument to be made that yes, there was maybe an out moment where he could not control. He did not know what he was doing. He just knew he needed to protect his daughter.
Not sure if they've gotten any evidence of an assault, if the little girl's bruised or injured. That the police haven't really released that, so they said she's okay other than the trauma of it. There's no really other witness than the child who's 4 years old.
Right.
The two adults in the room, one of them's dead, and one of them, we do know his story, the 23-year-old. Does that bother you at all?
I think that you can look at the actions of the father afterward, and they tell a lot about his sort of mindset and where he came from. Meaning specifically, he contacted the police after this event and said, this is what I did, this is what I saw. The police then came out, they investigated. So far from stories that we've heard, his story matches up to what he told the police. That tells you a lot about where he was coming from.
We got some polling that we did, and I think people, well, they won't be surprised at all because I think everybody feels similar to this. As far as justified or excessive, 2% feel the rancher, was excessive, acting as judge or executioner. 88% say he was just protecting his daughter, plain and simple. I'm not sure what happened to the other 10%. Every poll has some undecided factor, but it's universal, pretty much, that they cite. And I think it's a strange thing if you get all parents on a jury or a grand jury. It is weird. We've played this out, and we all say we would do the same thing. And so that's what makes you have a good case, right?
Well, and it has biblical implications. I mean, think about it. God gave us the right to protect ourselves and to do self-defense. There is this argument to be made that how far should that go? But when your child is in danger, when your child needs help,
well, you go all out, don't you? You go all out, and I understand this physical thing, and you say it's primal, but it is, and you go all out until you know the threat's over, and it takes a while. I think we'll be watching, and if anything changes, if there's any more evidence that comes out, we'll certainly pass it along to folks, but that's how it stands right now. Heather.
All right, thanks much.